Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about Chucky's placement on a tier list. I don't typically do tier list placement things because I feel like it just changes every time you ask somebody else. It depends on what map they're on. But I want to give a general estimate on how strong I think Chucky is. And if I had to put him somewhere, I would put him kind of like right below Wesker. So like a top 5 or 6 rough placement. The reasons are his chase potential is extremely good. If you even have like the ability to do stealth potential if you play it right and you have like aura reading perks or whispers or something to let you know kind of when to start your stealth. Because a huge mistake people are making right now with Chucky is running next to people, then turning on stealth, and then being surprised that they know that Chucky's there. Well, yeah, because they heard your terror radius and then it just shut off immediately. Of course, they're going to know you're there. So I've been finding a lot of use with like barbecue and chili. After I hook somebody, I gather basically how far someone is away. And then once I'm just outside the terror radius, I'll activate the stealth. And then I'll actually still have the slice and dice up for the hit as well. So not only do I get a stealth advantage, I also get the slice and dice to still use. So messing with your build has been very, very useful for enhancing the strengths of Chucky. And yeah, his chase potential is extremely good. He can get hits on almost every loop in the game. It's usually just down to the killer's skill at that point. However, there are a few examples where you can't, and that's if you have like a pallet right next to a very good window or something like that, and the window and the pallet are right next to each other. For example, a long wall jungle gym, if that pallet is dropped, you can't really outplay that. You kind of like you can't even scamper under it because then they can just vault the window to their right and you can just keep going around and around again. It's just you're never actually going to hit them. So there's a couple of tiles where he does just have to straight up kick a pallet, but for the most part, most tiles you can outplay with him, and that is the sign of a very strong killer. In fact, Chucky's real only downside is his lack of map control. That's really it, and that's why I would still consider a killer like Wesker to be better, because Wesker has a very good chase power, but he also has map control with the traversal, and he also has a built-in slowdown. So I don't see how you could call Chucky better than Wesker or anything like that. But I do think he's right under Wesker for all those reasons, and his only real downside is the lack of movement, basically. Now, that is not as much of a big deal anymore, because I don't know if you've noticed, but they keep shrinking the size of maps in DBD, and I think that's a good thing, by the way. I think killers without map control and killers that do have map control should be a bit more equalized, so I'm totally fine with maps being made smaller. Red Forest was just the most recent example of a map that was almost cut in half size-wise, and then I have no doubt in my mind they're going to tackle Crotus Brand Asylum, which is now the new biggest map in the game. So as maps get smaller and smaller, the lack of map control becomes less and less important. So in modern DBD, that's not as much of a downside as people might think. So yeah, overall, I would say Chucky is going to be like the top, very top of B tier, or like the very like bottom of A tier, likely top 5 or 6. Now, there's a lot of stuff with Chucky that we still have not learned yet, and or we have knowledge of, but it's still kind of hard to master. And I think that could bump up his placement even an additional point or something like that. I still don't think he's going to be above Wesker because of the lack of built-in slowdown and map pressure, things like that. But there are things that even I'm learning about right now from various people. And one of the most important things you can learn on Chucky is being able to flick his power, because normally after you begin the lunge, you're basically locked to like 90 degrees swing, and that makes it so it's a bit harder. However, there is a method where if you do something like this, you can actually get a near 180 degree flick, and it's extremely powerful if you do it right. This is just a small example, not even a full 180 turn, but there is a way to do that somewhat reliably, and it's not even as hard as like, you know, Wesker's Hug Tech or anything like that. So the fact that it's significantly easier to do, and it seems to circumvent the natural limit of turning on the killer, I'm not sure if this is something they're going to address. If not, then that does make Chucky way stronger because it allows him to get hits at certain tiles that you normally can't do. But it's also not super overpowered because in order to do it mechanically, you basically have to flick your mouse across your entire mouse pad, and you can't really aim it that well. You can just throw it in the general direction of where you think they're going to be and hope it ends up where they are. So it's not like it's a guaranteed thing, but there's also the huge downside of console players simply cannot do this whatsoever. You can't move your controller stick that fast. It just doesn't work. So it makes him disproportionately stronger on PC, which is also not a good game design thing that I like seeing. But if they remove this, it'd make him a bit weaker. So I don't know how I feel about it. I'm going to need to go against it more. Like I said, most Chuckies, just like most Weskers and just like most Blights, are not going to do these advanced techs that are mechanically quite difficult to pull off reliably. So you're not really going to have to worry about it most of your games. But when I think of killers, I try to think of their max potential. And I do see a pretty high potential for Chucky to be even stronger than he currently is right now once people really master this. Because like I said, I know how to do it, but knowing how to do it and mechanically doing it effectively in a chase and aiming it right is still something that I'm learning, and it's not super easy to do. So yeah, that could bump him up to like top 4 or 5 if that ends up being an intentional thing that stays. But overall, yeah, I would say Chucky, top 5 or 6 right now. Extremely strong killer. Only downside is lack of map control. The fact that he's 110 ends up not mattering at all because most loops are not straight lines like TL walls, Shack, and jungle gyms. He's going to be not super effective compared to 115 killer, but then he also has slice and dice to make up for that, so it's not even a big deal. But like round loops like this, like the majority of loops in DBD are just like round junk loops that are not very strong, but they're just like a rock and a tree or some pieces of wood, and you just run around it. Chucky can loop those as well as a 115 killer because his hitbox is smaller. So there's actually no difference there. It's only a couple of tiles that he's already good at because you can slice and dice down Shack or jungle gyms and things like that. So yeah, very strong killer. I'd say top 5 or 6 right now. He might be top 4 or 5, depending on whether or not the texts that people are discovering are intended and not fixed or said to be okay by the devs. Other than that, though, yes, extremely fun killer. Very, very good. I'm having a great time with him, and I can't wait to play more. Thanks for watching.